relationality and focusing on one process. It's one interactional process. Focusing is an orientation. Not only as a therapist am I oriented by my own focusing, my own in-touchness with the emergence, but also I'm oriented as a therapist by everything I learn about change and emergence from the focusing process. And so that orientation helps me to situate myself in time and space in the therapeutic session and in the therapeutic relationship. So I'm oriented by focusing, and I'm also a relational therapist, meaning that I emphasize the importance and the value of relationality in many, many ways. So FORP is sort of relational in two ways. It's relational in focusing on one thing, and then also there is an orientation toward all the ways that we work with the relationship in a relational therapy.
It was just a time when research findings were coming in, research findings from our 3-year project. Carl Rogers had predicted that the relationship would make a difference. The relationship would affect the outcome. And the research showed definitively that the relationship made no difference. That was a great disappointment. I went looking to see how had they measured this relational thing. Well, they measured it by classifying all the statements. And so there were statements talking about us or the therapist, and they were classified relationship. And then there were statements about oneself and one's inner experience and all that, and they were classified not relationship. And how much relating there was going on made absolutely no difference. Well, I was in therapy at the time, and for me, that made perfect sense. I never talked about my therapist. I was much too shy to ever do that. Everybody called him by his first name, but I didn't. I knew that when I walked in the door, before I walked across the room and sat down there, when I walked in the door, I was different. So I said to myself, that's the relationship. And the statements aren't going to tell you anything about it. So from then on, for the next 20 years or so, I fought this battle in favor of relationships. It was a time when psychology consisted entirely of individual differences. That's all they were interested in. If you had any relational stuff, it was projection. Your doctor, you know, if you said to your analyst, Dr. Morrison, I love you, or Dr. Morrison, I'm mad at you, or anything like that, Dr. Morrison would say, that can't be. You don't really feel about me. It has to be your father or somebody else in your past. And I had one client who absolutely was driven crazy by that, because she loved Dr. Morrison, and she knew that she loved Dr. Morrison. She had never met anybody like that before, and Dr. Morrison could not stand it. And again, in my own experience as a client, I knew that it's always both. It's always what's going on now, and the past is in there. If the past hadn't been the way it was, this wouldn't be going on this way now. The past is always there, and the present is always there too. But that's not how people understood it. And even when I went to make focusing instructions, first there was research to show that it doesn't change over therapy. Then we were very disappointed, because we thought that over the course of therapy, people would do more and more inner touch making. Instead, you could predict from the first 2 interviews whether it was going to succeed or fail. Well, that was horrible, because that means people get together for 2 years and all this loving and care and effort and money and everything else, and you could predict from the beginning that it wouldn't do any good. So I went and did focusing instructions. And then when that result came out, then people said, oh, this is for those people for whom it's indicated. The people who are already going to be successful with that kind of thing, those are the ones who should have this kind of therapy, and other people shouldn't. Because everything was individual differences. There were only individuals. There were no relationships. And then one day, and I don't know that I marked the day exactly, it all flipped over, and the pendulum went to the other side, and now we have only relationships. Now everybody's talking about dialogue and interaction, and there aren't any more individuals, there are only relationships. So you think I'm happy? I'm just as unhappy as I was before. And meanwhile, being a philosopher, I know where that comes from. That doesn't come from psychology or psychotherapy. It comes from postmodernism. They eliminated the subject, the human individual. And that was a good revolution to have if you accept that revolutions are like that. They turn everything upside down, and so nothing really changes. It's just upside down. So in the postmodern philosophy for the last 25, 30 years, there aren't supposed to be any individuals. Of course, that isn't meant in the simple way. It's not meant to deny that you're sitting here and I'm sitting here. So now the individual would be some content that comes out, the source of all the content. Well, it's clear no, that's not right. The source of all the content is clearly everything together, the culture and the interaction and the other people and you and everything else. When Lynn sticks the R into FOT, there are two things that bother me about it. And as long as you know those, I'll be okay. One of them is the implication that, the old implication, that now there's only R. Now you can't have F anymore because there isn't any such thing. There's only relating. The postmodern people have it so that what happens in my therapy with you is a product of the stuff that you say and the stuff that I say. And I deny it. I say, no, I'm not a product. I'm not a product of what you say, and I'm not a product of what I say either, surely. It's a misunderstanding of what a person is to think of a person as content, because the living process is not what we say. The living process is not content. The living process isn't even what we do either. The living process is always implicit. And you see where we start to agree, Lynn and I. It's an implicit, living is implicit. And then what you do and say from it, well, that varies. So you think if I get up and walk out now, that's all there is to me is getting up and walking out? You wouldn't think that. Well, neither is what I'm saying all there is to me, or all there is to you. So if I talk about the relationship, that's swell. But if I'm too shy to talk about the relationship, there's no relationship? Okay, so one thing that bothers me is the current cant, the current language, bothers me just as much as the old language. We have to be able to think of living as a richer, much more intricate, much more complicated, implicit, ongoing, from which we speak. So right now I'm filling you up with my words, but surely you're sitting there, you're not just my words, you still know who you are and where you're going and many things that are more important than my words. Okay, the second thing that bothers me, perhaps even more, is that for people who don't know focusing-oriented therapy, it sounds like focusing-oriented therapy is all about going in. Then it would be, what, just two people sitting in silence for an hour or 50 minutes? It's an absurdity to think of focusing-oriented therapy as the opposite of relational therapy. Methods and theories, and that's not the same thing certainly. Methods tell us what to do as therapists, and theories tell us why it works, or supposedly why it works. Methods and theories, I say, are all helpful and we should learn from all of them. But they're desperately mistaken if you choose one of them. Know all the methods. Each method can sensitize you to very important things. If you know the method, don't do it, but you know it. So then, when that kind of thing comes up, you have a repertoire of things to do. So methods are good for repertoires of things to do. And I love every method that I ever learned, and I would like to learn some more of them. And in that spirit, I am learning some things from the relational people, because it gives me more things I can do when I'm stuck, and it also encourages me to do that kind of thing more. Focusing-oriented therapy is a clumsy title, isn't it? But I fought for it. It means that you do anything and everything that was ever helpful for anybody, but you do it in a focusing mode. That means you are in touch with focusing levels in you, and you invite help the client to get in touch with deeper levels of them. My second point wants to be, don't, in therapy, as a therapist, don't do a method. If you do a method, my burlesque of this is that you're really saying, I am a Gestalt or whatever therapist. I'm a focusing therapist. I'm a whatever, relational therapist. If you come to me, you're going to do Gestalt, okay? If you don't like it, go to somebody else. That's not an attitude to have towards a human being who is sitting there. Completely the opposite. When I get ready to see somebody, and I may be in all kinds of bad mood and upset and troubled and whatever, but in 5 minutes my client will come, I get ready for that. And that means another human being will be sitting there. And then I become the chair, the person in the chair. This is a very big chair, and I'm a very small person. But I know how to be in the chair. So then I take all my own stuff that's been bothering me and I put it here, and I take all the methods that I know and I put them there, and I am armed, right? I know a lot of methods, I know a lot of things I could do, so I won't be stuck, don't worry, but here's my armament, and then I'm open. And then somebody is sitting there, and I'm open, I'm waiting for them. They're somebody. And they live in a world that's skewed to mine. It's different. And so I'm waiting. And what am I doing when I'm waiting? Am I relating or am I focusing? Just like I, as a client, when I walked in the room and I was already different, was I relating or was I focusing? Don't divide that. That doesn't make any sense. So then I am relating directly. Now, my client may or may not be able to relate directly, may or may not be able to look at me even, may be like I was as a client, too shy to do any kind of overt thing. But that doesn't matter. I'm here, and I know there's somebody in there. Now, currently they're trying to tell me there's nobody in there. There's only whatever you're going to do and whatever they're going to do. That's not true. I know there's somebody in there. And I know there's somebody way in there, even if it may take a long time for that person to get in touch with those levels inside. And until they do, we aren't really going to know a whole lot. Would you grant? I mean, this person's going to tell me their world, and that's a lot, and I have to learn it. But in terms of what's really wrong, we're not going to hear from because what's really wrong is always around the corner, and then again around the corner, and then down a little, and then around that corner. And unless you go those steps, you don't really know. Because each person is this unique world that's beyond the common world. I am relating to the person in there from the start. And what do I do? Well, whatever I think is helpful. So routinely, while I don't know anything, I want to respond mostly reflectively so that this person has the experience of being seen. And since nobody does that, if I do it well and if I'm lucky, the person will go home even after the first interview and say, huh, they may not have any words for it, but there will be some kind of implicit effect. And I want that all the time. But then again, I may not only reflect, because only reflect is making a method out of listening. You see, I'm client-centered. You come here, you're going to get back whatever you say. That's all I do. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. No, that's not listening. Listening is listening for the person in there. And so when something comes from there that says, I don't know, something that may move me to say something quite unusual or quite unlistening, unreflectively. And then I also know that when I say those things from me, so what am I doing there? I'm not reflecting, right? I'm not stating back what they said. I'm saying me and where I am and letting the person get a feel of me and where I am. And then if what I said was wrong, then I find for years now, almost all the years I've practiced, I find that doing something wrong, if you can catch it, if you know it was wrong, it's better than if you hadn't done it, because you go to try to fix it. And first you fix it by understanding it. Oh, I see. To you that meant da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, I didn't know that, but I see now. Oh, yeah. And then I may even fix it further and go further steps. I don't let a silence go for a long time. I want to be clear in the silence that we are connected. So if we're silent and the person is clearly moving inside, oh, then I'm satisfied. But if the person is looking around for sort of help me, I'm stuck, I'm not going to leave them there, right? Whatever I say, it doesn't go any further, or are you stuck, or was that bad what we did, or something or other. And then whatever I say is bound to be wrong. I'm not interested in saying something right. I'm interested in getting something right from the person. So this is my chief point, really. There is a person there, and if you will listen, you can tell that what comes from the person back at whatever you said is that's them. And what you said was just an invitation to them, or reaching for them, or looking for them, or whatever it is. Then when I hear back, oh, well, then I know better, right? Then I've heard from them. So I'm denying that there is no person there, and that what we're doing or being is some kind of co-created product of the two of us. I'm saying, yeah, it takes the two of us. It takes me to say something so that something will come back. But that what comes back lets me know where we are. Now, suppose I say something new that wasn't part of what my client had thought, and I teach all my clients indirectly by, if I say something and then they're sort of saying, well, that isn't quite right, and then again you see why it isn't quite right is because I just wave that away. I say, never mind, don't get stuck with what I said. What should be said? And so after a while, my clients do this too. I start to say something that's not right, and they go. Because they know that I'm not interested in what I'm saying. I'm interested in what is actually there. On the other hand, when I say something surprising and different than they had, but it's right, and my client says, oh, yeah, da-da-da-da-da-da, right? Then what I said becomes their own. Then often, with relief, I will say, oh, well, if it's right, I'll say it again, and I do. Because if it's right, then we want to stay there for a minute, not run onto something else. So my point is that even if I contribute the content, even if I contribute the interpretation, the content, or whatever you want to call it, when it's right, it becomes my client's own. And if it doesn't do that, then it doesn't take. So then it was just an invitation. Then I say, well, what would be right? You know, go see. And then if they can go see, they do that. They go see. And if go see doesn't mean anything to them, well, then we go on some other way. And there the R is very welcome in FOT, because the more things that we can do when somebody is not able to go in like that, the better. Because every time we do something, then we can point to where they were in touch with themselves. So focusing is a broad thing, and instructing people to focus is a very narrow thing. And mostly in therapy, I don't do it. I invite them. I say, what comes here when you say that? And that to me is a huge, wonderful thing that works with half the people, and I recommend it highly to you, whatever your orientation is. If you wish your patient would go in and be more in touch, just say, what comes to you here as you say that? And then half the people will go right down, and your whole therapy will deepen immediately.